Hi, I'm Yulia. Today is August 28th, and this is the news brief. Today we're going to discuss the massive attack on Kyiv that happened from last night to this morning. Pardon, for me, I might be a little slow today because I went to sleep at 7 in the morning. And then we're going to discuss it together in the comments so you don't have to suffer alone. And of course, I would say so I don't have to suffer alone. But unfortunately, today is a very somber day for my city of Kyiv because while I'm recording this, there have already been 18 victims of last night's terror recovered from the rubble. And by recovered, I mean their bodies. So yeah, if you have any questions, suggestions, or anything you want to add, please do so in the comments down below. Let's go. Last night, Russia attacked Kyiv with many various types of different missiles, drones, and this attack lasted from about, I want to say 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. all the way up to 7 a.m. It was one of the most horrific attacks that Kyiv has endured in the recent months. I don't think that any news source so far has said that it was the largest attack since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. It certainly wasn't in terms of the amount of drones and missiles sent onto Kyiv. However, something very different happened last night, which made this attack feel so much worse than the others. The first two ballistic missiles that were sent onto Kyiv were sent from Bryansk. And I would like a map from Kyiv to Bryansk to be put on the screen here so you could see how close that is. While usually these come from Saratov region or somewhere much farther in Russia. So when a ballistic missile is launched, we get a warning on our end in Ukraine, and we have 8 to 9 minutes maximum to get to the bomb shelter. Most of the OSINT news channels and most of the missile monitoring channels missed these missiles entering Ukraine's airspace simply because there was no time. So what ended up happening is we received a message at about 2:30 or 2:40 in the morning that Kyiv is mostly clear for drones. Most drones are now heading to other cities. So, pretty much usually when we get a message like that, we see it as like a go ahead to go to sleep, because again, if we don't, we're just never going to sleep. And then I personally fell asleep at 2:40, 2:50, and I woke up at 3 something in the morning from two of what felt like the most massive explosions, and they felt so close. Car alarms started going off downstairs. My dogs were restless. The walls were moving. Like, it was a very huge impact, so I knew that it hit somewhere close, which I later found out that was the British Council building, which is 3 kilometers away from where I live, or in layman's terms, a 10 to 15 minute drive. So that is very close in terms of missile impact. Obviously, we ran to the bomb shelter, me and my dogs, where we spent the rest of the night until 6:30 or 6:40 in the morning. And while normally when I sit in the garage, it's really hard to hear both the explosions and the air defense working. It's usually like a distant sound somewhere quite far away. This time, every single time there was an explosion, it felt very much in the ground. My garage is underground, and it was shaking. All of the noise from the missiles hitting and being taken down or intercepted was incredibly vivid, incredibly loud, incredibly present. So I knew that the center of the city was being attacked. And unlike in most of Russia's airstrikes, these both landed and were intercepted with debris falling. A lot of them were in the very center of Kyiv. Like, if you think about like districts-wise, it's like District 1. So the very, very central downtown Kyiv. It was terrifying. It was one of the most terrifying nights for me, I guess, to date. So Russia used drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. Some OSINT channels were reporting early in the airstrikes that the ballistic missiles had cluster munitions in them. Now, I can't find any confirmation of that anymore, and I also do not see any of those reports anymore, so potentially that was a large mistake. And if you have seen those reports, just know there is not really a confirmation to that anywhere as of right now. There were also hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, or known to a lot of you probably as daggers, their translation. Residential blocks were destroyed, high-rise buildings were burning, schools and offices were hit. Also, the big one is the British Council building and the European Union's mission in Kyiv building were damaged. A direct breach of the Vienna Convention. At least 18 civilians were killed overnight, including so far 5 children. But again, as I'm recording this right now, I'm seeing that there are more bodies being pulled up from under the rubble, so I'm no longer sure in the last 5 minutes that the amount of fatalities is 18. There is still recovery work being done, and I'm sure that unfortunately the amount of fatalities and casualties is going to grow by the end of the day. So far, we are at 18 or more. And of course, until the recovery operations and the rubble clearing is not going to commence, we're not going to know the actual number of victims of last night's attack. Also, the fact that the British Council building and the European Union mission building were damaged actually means that there was a direct attack on the territory of the UK and the European Union, because those buildings usually are property, not property of the country as in property of the country in another country, but they're considered to be the land and territory of that country. For instance, if someone were to hit a British consulate in France, that would be considered an attack on the British territory. But we all know how these things end. No one's going to react to it. No one's going to do anything about it. And we're just going to have to pretend like it's all good and jolly. Another big thing that I haven't seen mentioned at all since yesterday, early in the airstrikes, there were a report of 5 ballistic or cruise missiles, they varied, being sent towards Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So the city of Pripyat, which is in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, was attacked with 5 missiles. And those were the reports when the missiles just started entering Ukraine's territory and just started hitting Kyiv. Chernobyl nuclear power plant is safe because it's under the sarcophagus. But if something were to ruin that sarcophagus, we are risking immense radiation leaking out from under there. This is not something that can happen because this is going to result in severe consequences, and not just for Ukraine, for all of Europe. Genuinely. When you think of pretend scenarios, or when you think of things like, or when you discount Ukraine's reports on Russia's attacks on a lot of European infrastructure and sabotage operations, and Ukrainian infrastructure is actually an attack on the security of Europe, people tend to dismiss it, but this would not be the what if. This would be a wave of radiation that would reach Europe. And somehow, no one's talking about it. At the same time as this was happening, Ukraine was striking Russian oil refineries. Overnight, Ukrainian drones hit 2 major oil refineries deep inside Russia. The Kuybyshev plant in Samara and the Afipsky refinery in Krasnodar. Both are key suppliers of fuel for Russia's military, including strategic bombers. In just 2 weeks, Ukraine has taken out more than 20% of Russia's refining capacity, a serious blow to the Kremlin's war logistics. I've also seen videos and reports of drones hitting trucks that were transporting that oil. And Ukraine has been doing truly fantastic missions. Now, Sergei Lavrov came out and said that Russia is still interested in the negotiations with Ukraine in the peace negotiations, quite literally, while Kyiv was being struck with all hell breaking loose in terms of weapons of mass destruction. And the second thing that he said was that Ukraine only strikes civilian infrastructure in Russia, but Russia only strikes military and military-adjacent objects. Now, there have not been any victims of Ukraine's attacks on Russia's military infrastructure because Ukraine quite literally only targets military infrastructure. While there have been countless victims in Ukraine every single time Russia touches the red button for sending its weapons of mass destruction's hell over or letting it loose, because Russia only targets civilian infrastructure. There have been no reports in any recent time of Russia taking out any military objects or targets. It's always apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, play yards for kids, churches, conventions, places of mass gathering, center of the city, apartment complexes. It's never anything even remotely military adjacent. And then, of course, Ukraine has been working on its own long-range weapons in response. Ukraine is showing its own reach. Long-range drones, precision missiles, and the new Flamingo cruise missile with a range of up to 3,000 kilometers. Now in serial production, hundreds are being built every month. This is no longer just defense. It's a technological revolution reshaping modern warfare because Ukraine needs long-range capabilities so we can not only fly drones into Russia to take out these military targets and military-adjacent targets. We also need to be able to do that from our own territory, striking with long-range weapons. And, well, most countries are not going to let us use them for these purposes, for the purposes of defense and for the purposes of ruining Russia's military-industrial complex that kills us. And there is a political message here. Ukrainian diplomats are very blunt about it. While Putin shakes hands in the West, talking about peace, he bombs Kyiv to the ground. His actions are a clear reflection of any negotiations, and a direct threat not just to Ukraine, but to the entire West. Because you can't say, I want peace, and then go ahead and send 598 drones and 31 missiles, including Kinzhals, in order to strike civilian infrastructure. And you don't say that you are for the negotiations and that you want peace in the same breath at the same time as those 598 drones and 31 missiles are attacking people in their sleep and terrorizing them. That's just not true. Russia keeps, pardon my French, pissing in the West's ears. And it's a spit in your face that Russia keeps telling your leaders that they're ready for peace and they want peace, and the leaders believe them, while Russia blatantly shows them how much they don't care, they don't value their promises, and how much they don't take any Western leaders seriously. That's all I have for you for today. Unfortunately or fortunately. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting Ukraine this whole time. If you enjoyed this news brief, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on all of your notifications, send this video to a friend, like it, and of course, if you have something to say, don't hesitate to do so in the comments down below. I'll see you next time. I'm afraid I need a nap.